Y'all all ready to go? We'll let everybody get over here. Okay, thank y'all for coming. We just wrapped up a boot camp on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This is something we wanted to do for all of our new members who weren't here when this House Republican majority worked with a majority Senate and President Trump to pass an historic piece of legislation that got our economy going in a way that we've never seen in generations. We have about 80 members who weren't here during that time, and so we wanted to walk through just how that bill came together and how well it's done to bring jobs back to America. We brought millions of jobs back to America. We made America competitive again at a time when we were losing companies. Thousands of American companies had left the United States because we weren't competitive. We had a 35% tax rate when the world average was 23%. And all that changed when we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And the biggest beneficiaries, and the data clearly backs this up, were the lowest income earners in America. They saw tremendous wage growth, great job growth, so more job opportunities. We had virtually no unemployment. Anybody who wanted to work had multiple companies competing for them and paying higher salaries for those families. President Biden right now is trying to unravel that success by raising taxes on hardworking families, by passing tax increases that would run more jobs out of America and cost those low-income families the good jobs that they enjoy today. We don't want that to happen, and in fact, we will fight to stop that from happening, to prevent these tax increases that would hit the lowest income families the hardest. And so with that, I want to bring up the man who wrote the bill, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee when we passed this historic legislation, Kevin Brady.
Right. Thank you, Whip. So as Whip said, we met with our freshman and sophomore Republicans to talk through the Tax Reform Act and what it did for the American economy, more importantly, what it did for working families. The old tax code, the old broken, complex tax code that Joe Biden wants to take us back to, was almost anti-American. It slowed growth in America. It destroyed jobs. It kept paychecks flat for more than a decade. And every week it seemed like we read about a new U.S. company moving overseas, taking their jobs, their manufacturing, and hurting those communities that were left behind. That's the America Joe Biden wants to take us back to. And there's no question his crippling tax increases will sabotage our jobs recovery. It will drive U.S. jobs overseas, and perhaps most importantly, hurt working families and our Main Street businesses. I will also tell you that by targeting America's investment infrastructure, by taxing inflation, doubling capital gains, targeting entrepreneurial income, by expanding the Obamacare taxes to small businesses, that he will weaken the ability for communities to invest in themselves. And the truth of the matter is, what President Biden wants to do is tax businesses and take the investment decisions out of a community, bring it to Washington, D.C., where Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi will decide which communities are worthy of having government investment. That will hurt families and communities across the country. So we are here with our freshman and sophomore classes as Republicans, talking about the damage this will do to working families and small businesses. And I'll tell you, we are going to fight these tax increases tooth and nail because it will land on America's workers, our families, and on our communities. And right now, coming out of this pandemic, this is the last thing we need. This is absolutely the last thing we need. I'll point out, during the State of the Union, just sitting there listening to President Biden's policy proposals, I counted 6.5 million American jobs lost just in his address to the Joint Congress. It's gotten worse since. This is the fight that we are in it to win it, and our Republican sophomore and freshman classes are going to be helping lead that charge.
Byron Donalds, Florida House. Oh my gosh, I gave myself a demotion. United States House of Representatives, Florida's 19th Congressional District. The Joe Biden tax plan is a tax plan that only China and Bernie Sanders would love. You see, Joe Biden's never worked in the private sector. Nancy Pelosi's never worked in the private sector. I spent 17 years in the financial industry, in banking, insurance, and financial services. And I will tell you that if you double the capital gains rate, if you raise our corporate income tax to 28% like they want to do, it will make our companies less competitive. We will start to see companies begin to leave our shores again. And you will see not only companies, but you'll see Americans start to make hard choices about whether to sell their businesses or even sell their homes. That puts Washington right in the decision-making process. And I will tell you, as an individual, I don't want any of these people making decisions for me. My wife and I are actually having a conversation right now about selling our home. But if the capital gains rate goes from 20 to 40%, it's a very different conversation. That's a disaster for American families and American workers. If you want to see, frankly, black families or Hispanic families lose jobs or get paid less money, raise the corporate income tax in our country. Make it harder for small businesses to actually keep more of their money to invest in their businesses, and those families will see less money going into their home, going into their pocketbooks to pay for food, to pay for their children's needs, or whatever else is going on. You couple that with the fact that we've already seen some of the implications of this president's economic agenda. We see small business owners can't get people to apply for jobs across the United States. They're not applying because of extended unemployment benefits that we simply do not need at this point in our economy. You also couple the fact that this is the same president that wanted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So put this all together, everybody. Like the Democrats love talking about intersectionality. Let's bring it to an intersection. If you raise the minimum wage, if you raise regulations, if you raise taxes, how do you expect American families to actually have a job that will pay them the money they need to sustain themselves or even try to go up the income ladder? If you raise individual income taxes, all you're going to do is put more Americans into one of the most devilish things ever created, which is bracket creep in our tax code. You're going to make it worse. It's going to be harder for families to become more competitive and to go up that income ladder. So this tax plan is a tax plan that only China would love, and also Bernie Sanders, because it's exactly the things that China wants to do to make us less competitive when it comes to the Chinese. Make no mistake about that. This tax plan will do exactly that. That's why they would love nothing more than for President Biden to get his way when it comes to tax policy in the United States. Thanks, guys.
Carol.
Thank you, Whip Scalise and Ranking Member Brady. I'm Carol Miller from West Virginia. This meeting provided unity for the Republican Party to show how we feel about raising taxes. For 3 years, our small business owners, our lower and middle income workers, and our seniors all saw an increase in their paychecks and in their money that they had, and the ability to spend that money however they wanted. Mr. Brady is exactly right. This is not the time to be raising taxes. What we need to do is open our economy and allow America to get back to work. Put the pandemic behind us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Yvette Harrell, New Mexico 2nd Congressional District. I am so honored to be here with my colleagues because they have it right. It is really so dishonest for this administration to think that raising the taxes on the American worker, the American business, and the American voter is the right thing to do. From a nation that's been locked down for the last year because of COVID and now struggling because of these harmful policies, gas prices going through the roof, all the uncertainty happening, and then to think saddling our families with more taxes is a smart idea, is dishonest, and it's wrong. And I know from my own district, 3 years ago, people were ecstatic. More money in the pocketbooks of the American worker, more money going back into the business owners, and then being spent in our local economies with our local merchants. Our economy was great. Right now, we have more jobs than people willing to go back to work because we're incentivizing people to stay home. And then thinking that they're going to have to pay more taxes, it's wrong. We need to stand together. We need to stand united for the Americans that that expect more out of their government than what this administration is doing. And I'm excited to see what we can do in terms of keeping these taxes down, putting people back to work, giving people the opportunities they deserve and need in a country as great as the United States of America.
I'm Kevin Hearn from Oklahoma's 1st Congressional District, and 2 years ago I was a job creator for the previous 35 years. So I was on the receiving end of tax policy from Washington, D.C., and what I saw after the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act was an incentivization of job creation in America, putting people back to work, and we saw the highest growth rate in wages at the lowest income levels, which is exactly what we want to do. And also what I saw was, an administration that cared about businesses, small businesses in America that create 70% of all new jobs in this country. What I also saw in the last few months of this administration is to reverse all of that by having the largest tax increases in a generation. In fact, when you're in small business and you're a job creator, what you know are 3 things that we've often heard. If you're for big government and big bureaucracy and big taxes, you're not for the little guy. And that's exactly what this administration is not for, is the little guy. When you look at what they're doing with corporate tax policy, all that's going to do is shift jobs overseas. All the supply chain for all the big corporations that the Democrats like to rail against are all going to be devastated. All the folks out there, the 8.1 million jobs that are open, and we only had 266,000 jobs filled, we're going to see that even grow even worse as far as trying to find employees to go in those jobs. This is a job-destroying legislation that's coming forward from this administration. We've seen this from the first day of the inauguration. He wanted to work together, then goes and ships jobs overseas by canceling the Keystone XL pipeline. Time and time again, you got to watch the rhetoric, what's coming out of this administration. It's about big government, not helping businesses get people back to work. And we've got to continue to push. We've got to get people back to work, restore this great economy. No president, no leader ever in the history of this country has ever raised taxes coming out of a pandemic, coming out of a crisis. This is something that, as my colleague said, that China is loving, and that Senator Bernie Sanders loves, who said this is a more aggressive, more progressive tax policy than even he could have come up with. So with that, we're going to work hard to protect and support our small businesses and push back on these egregious tax policies. Thank you.
Hello, Lloyd Smucker, Pennsylvania, 11th District. So I was a small business owner for 25 years. From the age of 17, I bought a very small company. I was out hanging drywall every day. We grew that company over 25 years to one that was employing hundreds of individuals, creating family-sustaining jobs. And I noticed something over the course of those 25 years, the growth of federal government that intruded in every area of our lives, the increased regulatory environment, and the taxes, more and more dollars that were earned by businesses were going to fund the federal government. And I was so proud then, I ran for Congress to try to improve that, and so proud of TCJA that put more money back in people's pockets. And I saw the difference in the district that I represent. Saw the investment into small business owners, saw their excitement as they saw a government that understood what drove free enterprise and what drove job creation. I saw the difference in the families that I represented, $5,000 increase in the average wage of middle America households between 2017 and 2019 as a direct result of TCJA. The lowest unemployment, more people back to work than at any other time in our history. That extended to all sectors of our economy. Lowest unemployment rate ever for Latinos, lowest unemployment rate ever for African Americans. We really made a difference in the lives of people. And so it's baffling to me that today Democrats want to undo that. They want to undo what led to the strongest economy that we'd ever seen. And to me, the choice is simple. They believe in bigger government. We believe in the American people. They're putting policies in place right now that is creating more dependency on government. And we believe in the ingenuity and the hard work ethic of the American people. They believe in less choice, in government making the choices for you. But we believe that American people should make their own choices. It's a simple decision here that we have today. And I'll tell you what, for myself, I will always bet on the American people.
Here, here. We'd be happy to take a few questions. Yeah.
One of the provisions in the 2017 tax code that was reformed that's been controversial is the SALT cap, and 9 Republicans in your conference have come out with 21 Democrats calling for the repeal of that SALT cap that was put in place by the 2017 tax reform. So is that a conversation you guys are open to having with your Republican colleagues about lifting that SALT cap?
If you look at, and it's one of the big decisions that was made to get rid of that SALT deduction, it was really an incentive in the tax code to benefit high tax states. And it actually encouraged states like New York and California to raise their taxes even higher. And by getting rid of that deduction, number one, it allowed every other American, 45 states actually benefited by getting lower taxes for their hardworking families because 45 states were subsidizing 5 states. You are seeing an interesting debate within the Democrat conference right now over SALT because some members want to bring it back, but you look at AOC and some of the socialist members in their conference that are pointing out that it's a tax cut for billionaires and millionaires. And so let's see where the Democrats go on that. But the bottom line is right now they don't have the votes to raise taxes because they know hardworking families are going to be hit the hardest. When you think about this, and I know it was talked about a few times up here today, the person writing this bill, the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, is named Bernie Sanders. Does anybody really think Bernie Sanders is going to write a tax increase bill that's not going to affect hardworking families? Everybody's going to see more money coming out of their paycheck if liberals in Washington and socialists in Washington team up to take more money out of everybody's pockets. And by the way, families under President Biden are already paying more in everything they buy. They're paying more for gasoline today. They're paying 400% more for lumber. They're paying more at the grocery store. So the Biden sticker shock is real, and it's already hitting hardworking families. What would this country look like if he's able to go and take more money out of everybody's pockets by raising taxes?
Thank you. Do you share Leader McCarthy's concerns about the January 6th commission, his objections to them, and Congressman Katko, who Leader McCarthy has to work on this, seems to believe that there is a good chunk of support among the Republican conference. So, is he right about that?
Well, first of all, there are a lot of members of our conference that want to see a much broader investigation, and I know there's going to be some members bringing. I'm not sure what time the Rules Committee is going to meet when Speaker Pelosi is calling them in. There are a number of our members who are bringing amendments to broaden that investigation. I'm waiting to see what they determine because there are a lot of other things that should be on the table that our members have discussed, and even that Representative Katko himself pushed to get in these negotiations.
But, sorry, to be clear, though, you don't share Leader McCarthy's objections specifically about the scope?
No, I'm concerned with where it is right now. But there are amendments that are being brought forward in the Rules Committee by a number of our members, and I want to see if they're able to be successful in getting those adopted.
Yes, so the Rules Committee met, the amendments.
Well, let me.
The amendments are not in order. And then,
well, clearly the Democrats then don't want to have a fuller investigation. So yeah, that's the way that Pelosi's been running this. Is there was well.
It goes to the floor tomorrow. Do you plan to support it as it is right now? And will you urge your members to vote for it?
Well, first, I think it's a shame that Speaker Pelosi is not working in a bipartisan way on the suggestions that have been brought forward by many of our members. And, ultimately, she is the Speaker, but it's one of the things that we've said. Look, President Biden, when he ran, said he was going to work with everybody. He's yet to follow through on that promise. You're surely seeing House Democrats run in a very unilateral way where they're shutting an entire party out of the debate, and that's unfortunate because we should be having a bipartisan debate about this and a lot of other topics. Again, tax policy and infrastructure policy should be something that we would work on together as Republicans and Democrats, and that's not where Speaker Pelosi's running this House.
Just to follow up on that, though, are you worried about the optics if you do have some members who vote in support of the commission tomorrow and some who don't, considering that you want to be unified, but the vote may not?
Well, as you see, and I don't know if there are any other questions on tax policy, which is what we're here discussing, you're seeing a very unified front on a number of areas where we've been putting ideas out there for getting our economy back on track, for reopening schools. Republicans have been incredibly unified in helping families get back to their lives again. You know, CDC comes out with guidance, and you see Democrats trying to unravel that guidance. You see the CDC allowing teachers' unions to rewrite the rules on opening up schools to play political games with millions of America's children. And it's going unchecked by the Biden administration because he won't stand up to them. You're seeing a disarray right now in the Middle East where Hamas is using Gaza to strike terror against Israel, and you don't hear President Biden standing up to the Democrats in his own party on the House and Senate floor that are openly attacking Israel at a time when Israel's under attack. We should be sending that unified message, not just as Republicans, but as Republicans and Democrats, to stand with Israel. What you are seeing is Republicans standing together, united, against this socialist agenda being moved forward by President Biden and Speaker Pelosi.
Last question.
Yes.
One quick follow-up on January 6th. Then I have a
I'm glad y'all are interested in tax policy.
I have a question
Yeah.
about the tax
There
policy.
you go. All right.
If this passes in the Senate, because the Democrats say they have the votes to pass this in the House, do you think Republicans should cooperate with this panel and appoint members to that? And my second question is, in 2017, you all passed the Tax Cut and the Jobs Act, and signed it into law. President Trump signed that into law. Democrats, I know you would challenge this, but Democrats said at the time that this was something that was, the benefits of this were felt mostly by the wealthy, and rightly or wrongly, they used that message leading into the 2018 midterms, and they took back the House on that. I'm just wondering if there are any lessons from that experience that you all are taking into this, these negotiations and back and forth with the Biden administration on tax.
Yeah, well, first of all, on the vote tomorrow, there's also a vote coming up later this week on a supplemental that Speaker Pelosi didn't work with us on regarding security in general. There aren't many Democrats I've heard from in the Senate that even support that measure. So predicting what the Senate will do, there's a lot of speculation there because Republican and Democrat senators aren't even supportive of some of the things you're seeing Speaker Pelosi move this week. When you get to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there was a lot of false rhetoric by Democrats. And look, all they say when it's time to cut taxes, first of all, they all stand up against taxes. And if they're going to make cutting taxes a partisan exercise, I'm proud to be in the party that is for giving families in America more of their hard-earned money back. But they talked about who would benefit. The data's there now. You don't have to wonder about who benefits. When you look at the data that we've seen after over 2.5, 3 years of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the income levels that benefited the most are the lowest income levels. The jobs we were losing our middle class in America during the Obama years. Great American companies, 4,000 plus companies left America. They were called inversions. They were headquartering in other countries. Do you know since we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there's not been a single inversion. Not one American company has left to headquarter in another country, and millions of jobs came back. And nobody can talk about that better than the lead author of the bill. So Kevin, if you want to finish up on that.
Well, I would just say that claim has been debunked so many times, I'm surprised anyone in the press still repeats it, including President Biden, who did it at the State of the Union or joint address and did it recently as well. Truth of the matter is, what working families saw, what communities saw, that giant sucking sound of jobs and research and investment back in the U.S. is incredibly popular. And to that point, if President Biden thinks it is so unpopular, bring a repeal of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to the floor. Let's see where lawmakers stand. I predict it would go down in flames to repeal the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And the truth of the matter is, again, right now, the American public, they know this will land on them and their communities. They believe in polls that infrastructure should not be funded on the backs of American workers. They don't want to see tax increases on American job creators. They want Congress to find space within their budget in all this wasteful spending to fund infrastructure for the future.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.